Hi creatives! Today we're creating a brand from scratch for a photography museum. The museum is called Photographica and is specializing in modern photography and in mixed media. They need a new brand because they're opening up a new location right in the city center, and also they're going to start focusing a lot more on their actual digital presence compared to what they've done before. My branding projects always follow these 5 steps. And in my last branding video, we really focused on the customer and persona research. So today I thought we would focus really all of our efforts on the concepting and creating really beautiful and effective mock-ups to present to our clients. Let's dig in and get started. So my first step is to look for inspiration. And I always like to get out of the office for at least part of this process if I can. So we have a really beautiful library in town, and I went to look for photography books. And there's also an art museum nearby, so I went and had a peek at that. I also like to look at more like traditional places like Pinterest and Behance, and I put together everything that I find in Milanote. I really love the function how you can create color swatches, and it creates like a mood board that's a lot more easy to interpret when you're actually starting to design your brand. I've noticed that a lot of museum brands that I'm really drawn to, they have a very dynamic branding where the logo itself can be used for cutouts or overlay to create a more interesting design. Since it is a photography museum, I also want to give the actual photographs center stage. So I think we want to keep the typography black and white and stick to like a very classic selection of typefaces. Because it's a modern museum, I also want like something that gives a pop of color, as well as a deeper color that shows quality, and it gives us a lot of contrast. So I think this dark green will work really great as a foundation, and the pink and orange can bring like a bit more energy to the brand. Before I start designing, I always like to come up with the concept behind the brand. So for this brand, I had the idea of playing with the pixels of photography in a really kind of rough way. And I can see from the mood board that a lot of the examples, they have very, very straight lines. So I want to see if we can incorporate that in some way. So let's start with the logo design. Since this brand has 2 words in the name, I always like to try out different layouts, either all on one row or stacking the words, for example. I think in this case, the stacked version works much better. So we're gonna go with that one. I always try out a lot of different typefaces, but in this case, I think Active Grotesque is a really good option because it feels very classic, but it also has some sort of formality to it. For the icon, I want to play around with the idea of the pixels that we talked about. So I'm going to try different ways to stack or like combine the squares to create something interesting. One function that I love to use when I create icons or logos in Illustrator is the rotation tool. So if you select your shape, you press R and you hold down Option. You can click in the middle of the shape that you want to create and choose Duplicate. You can then set the rotation to the degree that you want your shape to rotate for each new one that you're adding. So I actually really like the result of this because it looks a little bit like the center of the shape is the flash of a camera. So let's go with this, and we're now going to start combining the word mark and the icon to make sure that the lockup feels very balanced. I might try using different weights for the different words just to make it easier to read, so we can try that out. Normally, I always like to keep my designs as simple as possible, but I want to try out the idea of placing the shape in a square because it feels a bit more like a camera, and I think it would also make the logo a little bit easier to apply to our print and our marketing later. Because you can put it in a corner, it will fit really nicely. So let's give that a try. Okay, I actually really like that. So let me know what you think in the comments. Would you use the square or would you use the icon by itself? Next up, I want to start creating the visual language, and I'm going to start with a poster design for the exhibition. The goal here is to create a template that they could use for any event, where all they have to do is replace the photography and change some of the details like which exhibition and which photographer it is. This type of work is really helpful to clients because it makes the brand a lot more consistent over time. So I like to start in black and white just to get an idea of the layout options. And then here I'm being a lot more literal with the pixel concept. I want to try to use the pixels to add my information like the exhibition title and the artist name. And to add the brand colors, I keep the text and the main layout in black and white. And then I use a combination of the brand colors with the pink and the green and the orange And to create this concept of the pixels, I also sample colors from the photography itself to mix that vibrancy with more of a camouflage effect in the photography. I always like to play around with the layout, so in this case I feel like the text and the pixels, they feel a bit small and like it's an afterthought, so I'm going to try making it bigger and see if that's better. As I'm looking at the logo now, I am redesigning and I'm thinking that maybe the icon needs to be a little bit bigger in the square, so I'm just going to give that a try. Yeah, okay, that looks a lot better. Now I want to make sure that my design and layout will actually work for different exhibitions and different photos. So I'm going to add another of the images and see how easily we can adapt that design. So I think it works well with the same concept. We just need to make a few changes where the pixels are placed, but it still looks like the same brand, so that's totally okay. Next up, let's create a simple website and some tickets. Since it's a branding project, I will not design a full web page. I just want to make sure that the design elements are easy to use and that we have enough different elements to form a cohesive identity. If I was also designing the full website, I would have created wireframes at an earlier stage and then we could start applying the design to that layout. So let me know if you would like a video on wireframing. Sometimes you have little mistakes like this arrow and you just actually realize that you like it better, so let's embrace it and keep this new arrow. For the tickets, I want to download a nice mockup, and I know Graphic Pair has really nice ones, so I'm gonna head over there. I really like that it has this rip-off part on the right-hand side because it gives us a lot of ways to incorporate the branding, since both parts need to feel branded even when they're ripped apart. In this case, I want to use the green background to make the ticket feel a bit more luxurious, and I want to use the icon and create a little ribbon coming up from the top. When I create any design, I always want to keep inclusion in mind, so I want to check if this orange color will actually be visible as text on this darker background. So to check, you can use this Accessible Colors website. I'll put a link down in the description, and you can just add the background and text colors and see if they pass the test. I think this one is just on the borderline with the size of text that I want to use, so I'm just going to use the pink color that is a little bit lighter to be on the safe side. For the main part of the ticket, I want to think about all the information that needs to be included first. And I also want to use a feature image from the exhibition so that the ticket can be kind of like a keepsake that visitors can have and remember the exhibition by. I know I always love to save those. I want to make sure that we hit the right balance between incorporating the pixels and colors, but also not making it too busy or overwhelming. So sometimes you just have to experiment and see what works best. Now we can add this design to our nice mockups in Photoshop, and I always like to add each element by itself so that I can move them around separately and resize them if I need to. I think the mockup feels really light and it's kind of distorting my green color. So if you have this happen where the mockup settings are altering your colors, you can go into the lighting or shading settings and play around with the opacity, or you can just straight up hide the effect. Since we want the second ticket to be the same, I'm just going to copy all the layers and add them to the second ticket. Last up, I want to create a sign for the museum, and I've noticed that we need a version of the logo that works with all the elements stacked, including the icon, so let's create one. I think this is why it's so helpful to create a lot of mockups and scenarios that fit your client's specific business, because it will help you spot things that are not practical, where you might need to adjust or add something to the brand. And here's our final brand. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments which version of the logo that you actually like best. Do you like it just as the icon, or do you want like the square around it the way we ended up using it? I hope you found this video helpful. If you want to learn how to pitch creative concepts to clients, I have this video on brand presentations that you can go check out. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck with your projects and see you next time.